JSN, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Does he belong in a tier of his own among the rookie receivers? My answer to that is an emphatic 100% yes. First receiver off the board. He goes to the Seahawks. He's Dane Brugler's #1 receiver of this class, one of my favorites. Let's talk about why this kid is so great. Not an elite size speed guy. And the big knock on him, this is the one that I can't really get over, is the fact that everyone says he's just a slot guy. Let's be real. Let's talk about this kid. 2 seasons ago, I know last year health concerns didn't really play, but 2 years ago, Jaxon Smith-Njigba goes 95 receptions, 1,606 yards, and 9 touchdowns on a team that had Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, who are among the 2 top young receiver talents in the league right now. Both of them have come out and said JSN is the best of us. I don't know if I buy that. I love both those players. I think they bring a little bit more versatility to the table. But in terms of what he does and does well, Smith-Njigba is in a class of his own. Even his ex-teammates saying that. Even his ex-coach, Brian Hartline, maybe the best receiver coach in college football, ranked JSN above Wilson Olave. He said he thinks Smith-Njigba is going to lead the NFL in receptions and receiving yards in no time. Big high praise from one of the best receiving coaches out there. He was competing for targets along these guys and racked up 28.4% more receiving yards than Wilson, 45.2% more yards than Olave, ending with those gaudy numbers, 343 yards better than the next best wide receiver season in the prolific history of Ohio State. That's Marvin Harrison Jr.'s season last year of 2022. Maybe the #1 receiver in Debbie right now. Smith-Njigba had 300 more yards than him. Across the full season, averaged 123.5 yards per game. That's the second best mark of any Power 5 receiver before their age 20 season since 2000. The person ahead of him, Jamar Chase. Pretty damn good company to be mentioned among. He's got elite quickness. You look at that combine, broke records for the cone drills there. Has Justin Jefferson type in and out of his breaks is what people have been comparing to him. And yeah, just a slot. Is that really a negative? One, I don't think that's true. I think JSN has plenty more to his game. But yeah, sure, 83% of his receiving yards did come out of the slot. So maybe he will be pigeonholed there. But look at Cooper Kupp, maybe the best receiver of the last 5 years. ASB, another power slot. Just because you're so damn dominant at a role, it doesn't mean that should be considered a negative. And I do think you can kick him outside. Now, immediate value, probably not the highest of this class, given you're playing with Lockett, with DK Metcalf in a run-heavy scheme. It's going to be a lot of competition. Plus, the Seahawks ran 11 personnel 3 receiver sets, among the lowest in the league. I do imagine they drafted him for a reason. They're going to switch that type of lineup formation and let him just – that could be seen as a negative. Imagine that you have to defend those 2 on the outside and then one of the best slots, potentially the best slot receiver in the league from day one when he gets in there. I don't know how you're going to stop the Seahawks offense. We'll talk about Geno Smith on a veteran podcast soon enough. They're going to be dominant, and he is clearly worth a top 3 pick in single quarterback leagues and honestly, potentially even worth top 3 in double super flex leagues as well. Tier by himself, love JSN. But then the question begs, who should go after him? And this is one of the biggest questions in the league right now is you're sitting there, JSN, Gibbs, obviously Robinson, and a couple of those quarterbacks are gone in your Superflex league. Which rookie receiver should go after JSN to round out round 1? And the debate often comes down to Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and then Zay Flowers as well. Let's talk about who I have at number 2 first. My number 2 receiver is Addison, going to the Vikings. 4th receiver off the board, number 23 overall. Dane Brugler's number 2 receiver of this class. We know the negatives. Doesn't have the ideal size, doesn't have a ton of play strength, and legitimately worrisome success rate against press coverage. Right around 50%. That was 17th percentile according to Matt Harmon, reception perception, one of the best statters out there that you should look at. But he does so much, so well. That's why he led the nation in receiving yards as a sophomore, becoming the 3rd Biletnikoff winner as a sophomore. He goes and transfers to USC, and has a slight downturn there, but still played really well. Time speed underwhelms for the lack of size at 4.49, but the play speed is very high, and especially in and out of his breaks. He just doesn't lose any type of momentum, any movement, just extremely crafty. The dude just knows how to get open, and that's such a valuable skill, whether zone, whether man, when they're moving him over. The success rate on digs, curls, flats, the best of the class, according to Matt Harmon. I do think the Devonta Smith comparisons, they're not fair. Smith won over 80% of his press coverage routes, whereas Addison, again, hovered around 50%. They're just different specimens. We got more arm length for Devonta, definitely a little more physical, even though they're both undersized. That's a pretty weak draw in my comparison, but he still has that type of ability to find the soft spots, get open in all those ranges of the field, every single level. And then the best part about this spot, the Vikings. 3rd in pass attempts, 6th in pass yards, 4th in TDs. Adam Thielen's gone. That's 107 targets vacated. And immediately, Addison, I like KJ Osborne, but man, Addison is much better of a threat. You got Osborne definitely stretching the defense. You got number ones focusing on Jefferson, probably double covered all game. We're going to have Addison facing number 2, number 3 corners out of the slot. He's going to feast. And this is a perfect spot in terms of immediate production. Honestly, probably an even better spot than JSN if you're talking about redraft leagues. I think Addison feasts. I think he's nice and safe regardless. A high floor, high ceiling. Even if he's always the number 2 to Justin Jefferson, I think he can do plenty of damage in that role. Now, if you're looking for higher upside, Quentin Johnston might have the most upside in this entire class. He was the 2nd wide receiver off the board at number 21, going to a perfect spot with the Chargers. He does need some polish with his route running, with his ball finishing skills, but this is among the biggest big play threats in the league with some real size. This is a pipsqueak class, as we've talked about with a lot of these guys. Quentin Johnston's no pipsqueak. Near 6'4", 200-ish pounds. The guy can blaze as well. He's got all those starting traits, great success rate against man coverage, but a limited route tree, limited roll throughout TCU makes it a little tricky to judge what his actual production will be at the NFL level, given he hasn't been asked to do a whole ton. Maybe there's a whole umbrella that we haven't seen unleashed with his route tree. We will find out how many branches he can add on there. He didn't get asked to do much, like we were just saying, but that does, he did play small. That was the one kind of downside for the big receiver of this class. He didn't have a high contested catch rate, so didn't play up to his size. But man, the range here could go from Christian Watson and T. Higgins all the way to Brashad Perriman or some of the comparisons, the ceilings and the floors. So if you're willing, similar to Anthony Richardson at the quarterback position, you want that high risk, high reward type of guy. Nobody has the ceiling of him. You get this chance to grow with Justin Herbert in an offense led by Kellen Moore, which is an absolute beauty given that Tech, when he was healthy for 3 seasons under Kellen Moore, he was top 2 in passing yards for 2 of those 3 years. He was top 5 in passing TDs for 2 of those 3. The offense was number 1 in total yards for 2 of those 3, top 6 in touchdowns in 2 of those 3. And the only time that Dak's healthy season was not within those top 6, top 2, all those impressive metrics, was when Mike McCarthy really hamstrung the offense last year, decided, I'm going to take over. I'm going to enforce that we run the ball more. He ends up firing more because he scored too many points and decided to pass up too often. None of that matters when he goes over here to pair up with Justin Herbert, an aerial bonanza. Man, this could just be a great immediate and long-term, especially with Keenan Allen on his back 9. So with that type of upside, yes, the floor is low, and we've seen it before. There's Jalen Reagor comps coming out. They passed on Jordan Addison, the sure thing, who, just like Justin Jefferson, goes to the Vikings. Another TCU receiver that has this freakish type of profile goes ahead of the sure thing. Could we see fate repeat itself? Maybe. But this is obviously a better spot, in my opinion, for Quentin Johnston, who I also think is a much better player than Jalen Reagor. And now we round out those first-round receivers, the absolute loss, kind of this tier. Zay Flowers. What does he bring to the table? Well, he's number 3 of the list for me. The 3rd receiver off the board, 22 to the Ravens. He's undersized, doesn't have the best skill set for outside work, it doesn't seem, but a lot of metrics given that size. You'd be shocked at how well he – this is more similar to Devonta Smith, in my opinion, than Jordan Addison. Very savvy competitor. Definitely has some very strong play speed, good pacing, creates space really well. And what I love about him, played all 3 wide receiver spots at BC, moved all over the place, 52% behind the line, 48% on the line, 72% success rate against the press, 70th percentile for that, despite being undersized. And then he goes at the combine, adds, 10 pounds of muscle, but boosts his speed score. All those things tell me this kid's got the dog in him, the way that he played at such a shitty offense with BC and still was able to thrive. He drew Antonio Brown comparisons because of this versatility, because of his competitiveness. despite the small size. Now, I think that's a bit of a reach here. We're talking about an all-time great in Antonio Brown, but the fact that that ceiling might exist makes Zay Flowers really, really intriguing to me. He's definitely been a riser throughout this process. He lands with the Ravens. That's tricky because it has been a graveyard for wide receivers. But this year, I think, promises to be much different because Todd Monken arrives, a much pass-happier aerial bonanza with the Bucs last time he was in the league. Had plenty of big play designs with the Bulldogs the last couple of years when he was back in the college game. You got Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, here. Any of those three could be a true number one. To me, this is looking more like a 1A, 1B, 1C situation in a lower volume attack. So the landing spot, not great. But you got tons of long-term upside now that you got Lamar locked down there for the foreseeable future. Maybe Zay Flowers does become that go-to guy because we saw him do it at BC from every position of the wide receiver, all across the formation, every layer of the field. I definitely think Zay Flowers could thrive there. And then becomes the next question. After you've got these kind of first-round receiver locks, first round drafted in the real league, first round drafted in your rookie drafts, there's no questions about that. Those, whatever order you put them, Addison, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, those guys are going to be among the top guys, besides JSN, of course, drafted in your rookie drafts. But once those four guys are off the board, the big four, let's call them, who belongs next? I have a pretty big tier in my rankings, which you can again find at rotostreetjournal.com. And who is number 5 is a question that a lot of analysts are going to disagree with. And especially with my pick, nobody, I think, has this guy as high as me. That is Nathaniel Tank Dell. As I just said, nobody's going to be as high at number 5 for me. Going to Houston. They trade up. They pick him at number 69, 9th receiver off the board. Let's talk about why I am so hyped about this. Over the past 2 seasons, Tank Dell leads all receivers in receptions, 199, yards, 2,700, 27 yards, and then scored 29 touchdowns, second. Very, very impressive. But he has a diminutive size. We're going to get into that. Elite hands, acceleration, chunk plays, short, intermediate, deep. He can do it all. Everybody looking for the next Tyreek. He's not going to be that. Tyreek is just that good. No one's going to be that. But this is a very similar, comparable skill set here. And what I really, really love about this, and I already love the kid. I had him at wide receiver 7 earlier. Just the last couple of days, we find out CJ Stroud begged the team to take Tank Dell after they worked out together in the combine. They kind of fell in love. And then we have CJ Stroud saying, we're going to come out and get you. He FaceTimes the Tank Dell and says, I told them I want you. And then we got Nathaniel Dell getting that call. So they formed this great relationship. He bangs the table, CJ Stroud, for him. He's not going to want to look like an idiot. So he's definitely going to pepper his guy. He's already talked about being the starting slot receiver of the team. Houston Chronicle reporting that Tank Dell will start there. And that is a great spot. We saw JSN thrive out of the slot with CJ Stroud before. He's not at that level, Tank Dell, not even close to JSN's level, but he does have very similar quicks to be able to just create so much space and then tons of potential damage after the catch. He's the type of guy that breaks one tackle and is completely gone, similar to Tyreek in that. And then you look at this situation. Could he just lead this team in targets right off the bat? He had 291 targets, was an absolute hog again, despite the size, which we'll dive into in a second. He could be a true 110, 120 target guy when you're compared with Nico Collins, Robert Woods, John Mechie. Maybe Mechie comes in and takes over, but there's a big question mark there. The wide receiver 1 role is wide open here. Now, the negatives we got, I guess I should finish with one last positive. After the catch, Yak designed offense for the 49ers inspired scheme. Just perfect, again, for Tank Dell's skill set. He is 23 and a half years old, so he's older for this class, only 5'8" and 165 pounds. That's tiny. Since 2000, there's never been an NFL receiver shorter or lighter to average even 11 fantasy points in a single season. So similar to Kane, at the running back position, we're talking about an outlier of outliers. But just like Kane, I love the landing spot, given his potential to lead this team in targets, given the fact that they have 357 targets, 64%, 2,860 air yards, 70% available, vacated last year. Tons of volume is up for grabs for a guy that has shouldered target hog upside in college. Again, CJ Stroud's guy. So much is stacking up well for Tank Dell. My number 6 receiver in my rankings is Jonathan Mingo, the 5th receiver off the board. He's picked at 39 to Carolina. He was only Brugler's wide receiver 12, but clearly the NFL teams liked him quite a bit more than the analytics community, than the film community. A lot of people speculated he was going to go high, especially after an insane combine. So let's talk about Mingo. His profile is complicated. He averaged 101.3 yards per game in 2021 before his injury. That's very damn solid. In 2022, he has 3.5 yards per route run, which would have led the Power 5 receivers, but then is moved to tight end on a fourth of his snaps following Michael Trigg's injury, and that really tanked his production. But the fact that he got moved to tight end just tells you, one, he's a great blocker. That was insane. Huge size as well in this, again, pipsqueak class. Mingo was a beast there. There's a Chase Claypool, Michael Pittman kind of blend to his game. And Frank Reich, looking at the Panthers in the landing spot, he definitely knew how to maximize Michael Pittman as that big power slot mold. 6'2", 220 pounds, big size. And who's he competing with? Adam Thielen? DJ Chark? There's very, very real upside for Mingo right off the bat to grow with young. I love when rookie and rookie come in together. They have the camps together before anybody else can even work with them. I love that. I think those two will grow together. There's definitely some long-term and short-term upside to Mingo, making him my 6th wide receiver prospect. Marvin Mims to Denver comes in at number 7 among my wide receivers in 2023 fantasy rookie drafts. He goes pick 63, the 8th receiver off the board. He was ranked as Brugler's wide receiver 9. There's a lot to love and a lot of question marks here with Marvin Mims. Everyone in the analyst community seems to be absolutely in love with him. Makes sense why. Very high ADOT, average depth of target. He had that speed slot type of role similar to a T.Y. Hilton, John Brown, and really thrived in that. But still, what's he bring to the table in terms of like press? Not great. Very just footwork and balance. But man, can he stretch the field with game-breaking speed, definitely vertical in that sense. And he lands in a really good spot to potentially maximize that speed here in Denver. If everything lines up, of course. Let's talk about why that could be great and why it could be ugly. One, Russell Wilson. Just a couple seasons ago, was one of the best. You see those moon bombs going out from Russell Wilson, among the best deep passers in the league, until we had last year just an absolute horror show for Russell Wilson. It's also pretty crowded there with, obviously Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. How many targets can be going around? Well, Sean Payton, think about all those years of Nola. So many years where 3+ receivers were absolute beasts in eating. And then he loves the deep balls. Sean Payton maximizes speed down the field. But that was with Drew Brees' pinpoint accuracy and absolute maestro for the scheme. Now, if Sean Payton revives Russ, Marvin Mims is going to start and thrive and be a beast right off day one. But we might have to wait till Russ gets replaced. And then it's like, what draft capital do they have to get an actual decent quarterback in there? Who really knows? So there's a lot of question marks. A lot of the value is tied to Russ. If it was a better quarterback, I'd probably have him 3 to 4 spot higher. Marvin Mims, a 5-star recruit coming into the game. But as it sits right now, a lot of question marks around his surroundings, but not his play caller, and not his deep ball skill set. Both of those things will mesh perfectly. And if Russ regains that moon bomb upside, Marvin Mims will be in the absolute perfect spot, and Sutton could be gone as early as next year. Let's round out my top 10. This is a tough guy for me to rank. Jalin Hyatt goes to the Giants, pick 73, 10th wide receiver off the board. He was Brugler's number 3 wide receiver. And I'm really interested to see what he does. 87% of his snaps come from the slot, and he really dominated there. Now, the scheme was amazing. We've talked about Tennessee, how they just had receivers running wide open all over the field, and Hyatt was the most open of them all. He's got big explosive play the moment he steps on the field. He definitely is not the most well-rounded guy, but easy speed, confident ball skills as well. When got the home run hitting upside, but can also win those jump ball situations, really good on contested catches. And then he lands with the Giants, which is a mixed bag. What I love about it, Brian Daboll, great play caller, creative mind, awesome spot in that sense. But then you got Wan'Dale Robinson, who had higher draft capital last year, Paris Campbell, a new arrival, Sterling Shepard returning, Darren Waller now in town. All of those guys profile as power slot type of guys, where Hyatt would most likely do his damage for the most part. But 67 catches, 1,267 yards, 15 touchdowns. Definitely a tough eval because 4.4 speed looks awesome, despite being, should maybe be a little faster you'd hope for. He's the absolute king at manufacturing those touches, that's what Brian Daboll does best. That's when Hyatt can really ramp up and create space. So I think he's going to get schemed to perfection. Just a matter of how does that slot competition play out, because they brought in so many guys here. It'll be really, really interesting. Definitely some boom or bust to this prospect, but I love the player. I love that Brugler loves the player. I love the team and the play calling. Those things could marry for a perfect baby here. Number 9 for me, Jaden Reed goes to the Packers, pick 50, 6th receiver off the board. Brugler's wide receiver 10, but J.J. Zacharyson, another expert I really love, loves the kid. In fact, he comps him to Stephon Diggs. Let's talk about why. One of those guys, similar to Zay Flowers, played all over the formation and played really well all over the formation too. He's got great speed, good route tempo, good downfield ball skills, all the ingredients to play at any position and be an NFL playmaker. He's a little small, like this entire class here, and just like not great against the press, but he definitely has a little bit more versatility to his game than, say, a Marvin Mims. Love the fact that a lot of the smart analysts out there like JJ are calling for him. And then you look at the situation with Green Bay. Who knows what Jordan Love will turn into, but we certainly know they need a number 2 to Christian Watson right now. So we could see Jaden Reed really step in to a clear-cut number 2 role. And rounding out this tier, I got 2 more guys, and then it's a couple of sleepers, and we'll hit the tight ends and be out of here. We're cruising at this pace, maybe a little longer than an hour, but I like what I'm seeing. We got 7 questions in the mailbag. Awesome. Keep those coming in, Wolfpack. I will be sure to answer whatever we got. And just again, one last reminder, that thumbs up button is so greatly appreciated, especially if you're new here and you like what you're hearing. Please do consider subbing to the show. Rashee Rice going to the Chiefs, pick 55, the 7th wide receiver off the board. Pretty surprising in that sense. He led the FBS and set an SMU record with 112.9 yards per game last year, just ahead of Aldrick Robinson and Cortland Sutton, and then Emmanuel Sanders. He beats them all out. That's a pretty good company between Sutton and Sanders to break those guys' records for SMU. And he did all this despite playing with a broken toe for 75% of the games. That's all impressive. He definitely has some areas that's inconsistent, average speed, but man, this guy can win the jump balls. Natural instincts after the catch. The best jump ball receiver in this class, in my opinion. Chiefs also vacated 15 targets in the red zone. That's the 4th most in the league. There is a role, even from day one, where he could just be a red zone threat. And so wide open. I mean, MVS, the returning veteran. Obviously, I love Kadarius Toney. We've talked about him a lot, but Juju's gone. They really need somebody else to step up alongside Kadarius Toney. Who knows if it's Sky Moore? Maybe he has a better year too, but they really went out and got Rice. Clearly liked what they saw. He brings a different skill set to the table than anyone else they had. Oh, we haven't even mentioned Mahomes. He gets to play with the best quarterback in the entire league. Only Jalin Hyatt, Trey Palmer, Marvin Harrison Jr. averaged more yards per route run last year. There's definitely some intrigue here to Rashee Rice. And last is Josh Downs going to the Colts. Pick 79, 12th receiver off the board, but Dane Brugler's wide receiver 6, a guy I was super high on coming into the draft. A little worried about that fall, the draft capital being pretty poor, but this could be a beautiful spot. He's definitely small and undersized, Josh Downs, but despite being small, he had the best contested catch rate in this entire class. It's a small sample size because he didn't have too many contested catches because the guy's so damn good at getting open. He has so much separation from receivers. He didn't have to make too many contested catches, but when he did, he was great at it. He drew because of that Tyler Lockett, Elijah Moore, those small receiver, but good against the defensive backs in those type of situations. Those are the comps he's drawn. The concern here, Anthony Richardson, we talked about the accuracy issues, how bad and scattershot he can be in the short to intermediate game. It's a run-heavy offense, and he might be Josh Downs the 3rd at best on the target totem pole. You got Pittman, you got impressive Alec Pierce, sophomore, coming in this year, and then an inaccurate passer to boot here. Definitely some concerns with Josh Downs long-term. If this player had emerged in a better situation as a talent, I think he's top 6 in this class. I agree with Dane Brugler, but the situation does have me worried for short and long-term value, but definitely belongs in that tier with those other 6 names. Now, which wide receiver sleepers did we not talk about that are worth mentioning? There's certainly a few. Let's go into the 4 to 5 names I think you need to know. One is Tyler Scott. He goes to the Bears as the wide receiver 17 off the board, pick 133. I'm in love with this player. I hate the draft capital, but I think he is set up for great success Maybe not this year, but down the line. Scott's a work in progress, but has very high end speed, 4.37 40 on his pro day. Very good short area sideness, similar to Tank Dell in this sense, consistently creating his separation there. Adds immediate value at special teamer, but has that Tyler Lockett type upside. Both Claypool and Mooney are also free agents next year. I think he was by far the best steal of the draft going to the Bears. I think they got an absolute steal, getting him as the wide receiver 17, pick 113. A name that you could take with your last, fourth round pick, given how far he fell, that I could see developing into something really interesting as early as next season. Then you got Cedric Tillman going to the Browns, Brugler's wide receiver 8, the 11th receiver off the board at pick 74. Donovan Peoples-Jones did a pretty admirable job as the number 2 to Amari Cooper last year, but there's definitely room for a better number 2 to emerge, and I am a big fan. I think Tillman does everything DPJ does, but has a bigger body and potentially even better. Big target, big acceleration, very strong play strength and ball skills, exploiting that perimeter matchups. He has all the starting traits for an X-receiver. He was banged up last year, and then Jalin Hyatt was able to emerge ahead of him, potentially similar to Hyatt and Hendon Hooker, maybe part of this insane scheme, but definitely has the potential to develop into a solid number 2 to 3 and have a good career if Deshaun Watson can regain what made him so special. And you got Kayshon Boutte going to the Patriots, not just for the name. That's not the only reason I love this kid. Coming out of LSU, 22nd receiver off the board, pick 187. It was a tough overall year. Definitely a lot of inconsistent moments, tons of insane flashes, but also a lot of those dogging it. Does the effort really exist? Does this kid really want it right now? Type of question marks with Kayshon Boutte. He was wide open depth chart here with New England, though. Patricia Hell is over, and I like what Bill O'Brien is going to bring to the table for the Pats. You got Jacoby Myers gone, and Kayshon Boutte did his best work out of the slot. We know the Pats historically have maximized those type of skill sets. So entering the year, Kayshon Boutte was considered one of the top 5 prospects in the league. Obviously, again, that inconsistent 22 was a little bit concerning here, but he had erratic quarterback play and still made them look a lot better than they were more often than not. He has big playability. He's got great contact balance, good body strength, great after the catch, all the things you're looking for your slot, racking up the yak. Definitely an interesting, tough evaluation because the effort level doesn't always seem there, but the ability is certainly there. So if Bill Belichick, if this coaching staff can really light that fire under Kayshon Boutte, he has the chance to be their number 1 receiver as early as this year. We will see. And the last name I wanted to highlight is Puka Nacua going to the Rams, the 20th receiver off the board, 177 overall. He was only Brugler's wide receiver 28, but I think he is underselling what Puka can bring to the table. He has to stay healthy. He's definitely dealt with his injury concerns, but smart, tough, athletic, and similar to a lot of these other guys we highlighted, can play all over the formation. He is a yak beast as well, Nacua. He averaged 7.1 yards after the catch, in addition to 3.5 yards per route run towards the top of the class in all of those. He's not an insane athlete, but he can really, really win contested balls, win after the catch. Very versatile. He brings a lot of Cooper Kupp elements to his games, and now he gets to learn under Cooper Kupp, who is not on his back 9 quite yet, but he's aging, and I just love the Robert Woodsian traits as well. We've seen that type of player thrive in McVay, and who does Puka really have to beat out? Maybe it would be tough as a rookie to just step right in, but Van Jefferson is the number 2 here right now with Allen Robinson now gone. I think there's a lot of upside just even from day one and certainly down the road. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.